Well, Valentine's Day is right around the corner. I figured what better way to celebrate a day full of love, romance, consumerism, and couples than with a couple of our own. Not just any couple either. The infamous killing duo, Jule Seabrook and her Prince Charming, Raymond Martinez Fernandez, otherwise known as the Lonely Hearts Killers. As usual, for a case on serial killer profile, let's take a look at the pair's past. We'll start with Seabrook because, well, ladies first. Anyway, Seabrook was born on May 6, 1920, in Milton, Florida, and had quite the terrible childhood. And in her early years, she would comfort herself with the thought of a fairy tale ending. She would live in her fantasy world, hoping for the day that her Prince Charming would sweep her off her feet. One of the main issues that tormented her childhood was her glandular condition, a condition that caused her to develop at an abnormal rate. By age 10, she had already developed the body of a woman, with matured sexual organs and an active sex drive to boot. Her condition also had the effect of giving her an abnormally slow metabolism, which caused her to be obese. This obesity then resulted in her getting ridiculed in school by her classmates, and to make matters worse, she was also ridiculed by her mother as well. By the age of 13, her older brother would also sexually assault a young Seabrook, but when she told her mother about what had happened, the blame was shifted to her, and she was beaten. In adulthood, Martha's life was just as difficult. Martha would later come to attend college, and she managed to graduate from a nursing school. She would apply to multiple hospitals in her area, but because of her size, she only managed to get a job as an assistant to a mortician. Martha was understandably not content with this career choice, so she moved to California. It was there she managed to get a job at an army hospital, and where her skills would finally be put to use. She would spend her nights picking up soldiers at bars, and taking them home, where they engaged in sexual intercourse. Unfortunately for her, these countless nights of sexual activity resulted in an unwanted pregnancy. At this point, she felt alone, and so she went back to her hometown of Milton. Soon after the birth of her child, and about 4 months later, she would find herself pregnant yet again. This time, she married the father, Alfred Beck, but the marriage would not last. He would divorce her only 6 months later. Seabrook would then find herself working in a nursing position at a local pediatric hospital, a position she took to support her family of 3. Months into her new nursing job, one of her coworkers would play a cruel joke on Seabrook. Her coworker sent her an ad to join a Lonely Hearts Club, and despite being deeply hurt by the childish prank, Seabrook decided to follow through and filled out a form for Mother Dean's Family Club for Lonely Hearts. She left out a few facts, like the fact she weighed 250 pounds and was a single mother of 2. In 1947, she would receive her only response to the ad. The only person to respond to her ad was the man that would change her life forever. Her fairy tale Prince Charming, Raymond Martinez Fernandez. Despite being deemed as the perfect fairy tale Prince Charming by Seabrook, Fernandez was anything but. Not much is really known about his past, but he was born on December 17th, 1914, in Hawaii to Spanish parents. In his adulthood, Fernandez was considered to be a handsome young man who lived with a calm demeanor. By 1932, he decided to leave the United States to work with his uncle in Spain. It was there he met his first wife, Encarnacion Robles. He would later enlist in the army in World War II, and would even work with the British Army as a spy. By the end of the war, he decided to make his way back to the States in search of a job. His initial plan was to go to the US, find some work, and then save enough money to send his wife and newborn son over. He was able to book a ride on a freighter heading to the Dutch West Indies, and it was on this boat where his life would actually turn upside down. While on the boat, he accidentally hit his head on a steel hatch cover, an accident that fractured his skull, caused severe brain damage, resulted in him being hospitalized for 1 year, and his personality would take a complete 180. He was no longer the gentle, calm soul he was before. Instead, he was prone to mood swings, and would often engage in violent behavior. The large scar and dent on his head also lowered his self-confidence, so he would cover up the scar and the bald spot left behind by wearing a toupee. Once released from the hospital, he continued his journey to the US, and would soon make his stay with his sister in New York. His mental state would continue to deteriorate as the years went by. He would stay in his room, often complaining for hours about never-ending headaches. And because of his inability to control his violent mood swings, he could never hold a job for too long. He then came up with the idea to con women seeking romance at Lonely Hearts Clubs. After he gained their trust, he would seduce them, and then, like any fine gentleman, proceed to steal anything they had of value. During this process of conning women, Fernandez would find himself with an uncontrollable violent urge to kill. One of his first victims was a woman he'd conned by the name Jane Lucia Thompson. She turned up dead in an apparent drug overdose, but before police could question Fernandez, he had already moved back to New York. What's really messed up is that he forged Thompson's will so that he could gain possession of her apartment, which forced Thompson's elderly mother to move out. He would continue this constant pattern of meeting women, seducing them, and then stealing everything they owned of value, until he met a certain someone, Martha Jule Seabrook. The two murderous lovebirds met in Florida on December 28, 1947. After they met at the Lonely Hearts Club, the one mentioned earlier, they spent 2 days with each other, drinking along with having tons of sex. However, after Fernandez realized she had nothing of value to take, he simply took off without telling Seabrook where he was going. Seabrook, however, was determined to be with Fernandez, and tracked him down to his home address. He was actually happy that there was someone who truly cared about him, so he insisted that she'd stay, but on one condition: that the children would have to go. Without even giving it a second thought, Seabrook agreed, and they left her children at the Salvation Army. About a month or so after leaving her children behind, Fernandez told Seabrook about his Lonely Hearts scam, but instead of turning him into the police, she decided to help him. She would look through multiple photographs and read through multiple letters of desperate women searching for a bit of romance. Once she picked out a target, Fernandez would commence his scam. It was then that the killing spree had begun. The duo's first victim, Myrtle Young, was encountered in August 14, 1948. Young pleaded with Fernandez to marry her, and upon getting word of this request from Fernandez, Seabrook became jealous and told him to get rid of her. So, after Fernandez robbed her of all her money, he drugged her with a heavy dose of an unknown sedative and sent her away on a bus towards Little Rock. Unfortunately, Young died before she reached Little Rock, and by then, the pair had already begun planning their next victim. The next target was a 66-year-old woman named Janet Fay. She was a widow who lived in Albany, New York, and she was in deep need of some kind of romance. Within 5 days of Fernandez smooth-talking, she insisted they get married. Seabrook, again jealous and full of rage, demanded that Fernandez get rid of her. However, before he could do anything, Seabrook and Fay got into a heated argument that resulted in Seabrook slamming a hammer on Fay's fragile head. She then took the 66-year-old's scarf and began to strangle her. They quickly cleaned up the mess and threw Fay's body into a random trunk they found in the house, which they then proceeded to bury. To cover up the mess, they typed up letters to notify the family that everything was okay. Regrettably, at least for the killing duo, they were unaware that Faye did not own a typewriter and did not know how to type. The family would later notify the police, but before they could even suspect Fernandez and Seabrook, they were already heading to the Grand Rapids, Michigan, to meet who would be their final victim. It's here I think I should butt in. Some people, even the investigators at the time, say that the couple possibly murdered 20 people, but from all the articles I read, I only really encountered 3 main ones, excluding the person Fernandez killed on his own. Most articles claim that they may have killed more, but evidence suggests that they only killed 4 together. That being said, if you know who the others are, let me know in the comments below. It would be much appreciated. Fernandez would meet the couple's last victim in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he introduced himself as Charles Martin to a young widow and mother, Delphine Downing. He would also introduce Seabrook as his sister to complete the illusion. It wouldn't take long for Fernandez and Downing to start having sex, and eventually, Seabrook and Fernandez would make residence in the widow's home for a while. Everything was going fine, until Downing saw Fernandez in the bathroom without his toupee, and upon noticing the hideous scar on his head, she accused him of fraud. In an effort to control the situation, Seabrook convinced Downing to take some sleeping pills. Soon after, Downing's daughter, Raynell, began to cry, to which Seabrook responded by choking the 2-year-old until she stopped. Fernandez took note of the bruises, and afraid of the prospect of Downing waking up, he took Downing's gun, wrapped it in a blanket, and shot Downing point blank in the head, killing her instantly. They wrapped the body in a blanket, and went into the wooded area to bury it. As for the child, they carried her down to the basement, filled a tub with water, and held the toddler in the dirty, water-filled tub until she stopped moving. Raynell was then buried next to her mother. What's really strange is what they did next. Instead of skipping town, like they've been doing for the past crimes, they went to a local theater to watch a movie. When they returned, they were treated to an unexpected knock at the door. It was the police, and their careless act would result in them getting arrested. The couple was arrested late in the day on February 28, 1949. The pair thought it would be smart to confess their crimes, as there was no death penalty in Michigan, and the most they'd be spending in jail was 6 years for their crimes. They were ironically mistaken. Their confession did in fact get them sent to prison, but they did not receive the desired outcome they had wished for. The two were extradited to New York, where they went on trial in July 1949, only to receive the death penalty. The two would be executed by way of electric chair on March 8, 1951. The Lonely Hearts Killers are an interesting pair, to say the least. It's strange to see Fernandez, someone who was so calm, peaceful, and a good husband, become a killer. The same could be said for Seabrook. It's odd that a nurse, with the intention to help people, would stoop so low as to kill innocent people. And a toddler, no less. All this also happened because of a simple, unfortunate circumstances, really. Anyway, as typical with most major serial killers, the duo has gotten a couple of books written about them, a recent one being called Killers of the Lonely Hearts, the tale of serial killers Raymond Fernandez and Martha Beck. They also got some documentaries made about them, and a movie retelling the murderous events of the two. It was simply titled Lonely Hearts, although it wasn't that good. Anyway, that should do it for this video. But before you go, let me leave you with this little factoid. Did you know, every 9 seconds in the US, a woman is assaulted or beaten. A good portion of those women is also likely to get assaulted or beaten on first dates alone.